Jake Collins stepped off the transport shuttle and looked up at the massive structure before him. The Nexus Prime Station stretched out in all directions, its metal walls gleaming under the artificial lights. This was the headquarters of the Galactic Merchant Guild, and Jake was about to become Earth's newest ambassador here. "First time seeing it?" asked Lisa Martinez, his aide. She had been working with aliens for 3 years already, and seemed completely calm about the whole thing. "Yeah," Jake said, still staring. "It's bigger than I thought it would be." They walked toward the main entrance of the guild halls. Jake watched as various alien species moved through the area. Some looked like giant insects walking on 2 legs. Others had blue skin and extra arms. A few looked almost human except for their cat-like eyes and pointed ears. What caught Jake's attention was the security checkpoint. Every alien had to pass through large scanning machines that beeped and flashed with lights. Security guards that looked like walking trees with guns took weapons from the aliens. Jake saw knives, energy pistols, and things he could not even identify being placed in storage boxes. "Excuse me," Jake said to Lisa. "Shouldn't we go through that security check too?" Lisa shook her head and pointed to a smaller door to the side. "We use that entrance. Humans don't need to go through weapons screening." Jake frowned. This seemed wrong somehow. He was about to ask why when a tall alien approached them. The creature looked like a praying mantis but was 8 feet tall and wore expensive robes. Its large compound eyes focused on Jake with what seemed like nervous attention. "Ambassador Collins," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like clicking insects. "I am Guildmaster Zethkri. Welcome to Nexus Prime." "Thank you," Jake replied, trying not to stare at the alien's strange appearance. "I have to ask, though, why don't humans go through security like everyone else?" Guildmaster Zethkri's antennae twitched. "Humans have special permission to enter without weapons screening. This was granted long ago and has never been changed." Jake noticed that other aliens nearby had stopped their conversations and were listening. A group of large, hairy creatures with claws looked at Jake with what he could only describe as respect, mixed with fear. Some smaller aliens with blue skin whispered to each other while pointing in his direction. "When was this permission granted?" Jake asked. 50 years ago, shortly after first contact with your species," Zethkri said quickly. "Now, shall we proceed to your quarters?" As they walked through the guild halls, Jake observed more strange behavior. The large warrior-looking aliens stepped aside when they saw him coming. A group of floating jellyfish-like creatures actually moved to a different corridor entirely when they spotted Jake and Lisa. "Lisa," Jake whispered, "do you notice how they're all acting around us?" "What do you mean?" she asked, though Jake caught a small smile on her face. "They seem afraid isn't the right word. Respectful, cautious?" "I've noticed," Lisa said. "It's been like this since I started working here. Nobody ever explained it to me either." During his first day of meetings, Jake tried to focus on trade agreements and diplomatic protocols. But he kept noticing things that did not make sense. In the cafeteria, other species would not sit at tables near humans. During negotiations, alien representatives seemed to agree with human proposals much faster than they agreed with each other. An alien that looked like an octopus with legs, actually, apologized to Jake for accidentally bumping into him in the hallway. Jake had barely felt the contact, but the alien acted like it had committed a serious crime. That evening, Jake went to the guild's public records office. He told the librarian, a creature with multiple eyes and tentacles for arms, that he wanted to learn about human-guild relations. "Most files about humans are restricted," the librarian said, its tentacles nervously wrapping around each other. "But I can show you some general information." Jake spent hours reading through documents on his datapad. Most of the files talked about trade routes and diplomatic procedures, but he found one document that mentioned something called the human precedent. When he tried to access more information about it, a message appeared saying the files were classified. The few details he could find mentioned a demonstration of capability that happened 50 years ago. There were references to biological advantages and defensive measures, but no clear explanations of what any of this meant. Jake found one report that made him pause. It was a medical document about the guild's hospital. The report listed emergency supplies that the medical bay kept in stock. Along with medicines for various alien species, Jake saw items that confused him. There were antidotes for venoms that he had never heard of. The strangest part was that these antidotes were labeled for use in case of human biological defense. Activation. What kind of biological defense, Jake wondered aloud. The next day, Jake decided to ask some of the older guild members about human history here. Most claimed they did not know anything or quickly changed the subject. A few showed obvious signs of discomfort when he brought up the topic. Finally, an elderly alien with gray skin and wise-looking eyes approached Jake during lunch. The creature looked around nervously before speaking in a low voice. "You want to know about the precedent," it said. It was not a question. "Yes," Jake replied. "Everyone acts like humans are special here, but no one will tell me why. My name is Velteran. I was here 50 years ago when your people first came to the guild. I was just a young clerk then, but I saw what happened." The alien's voice shook slightly. "What did happen?" Velteran looked around again to make sure no one was listening. "There was trouble back then. Different species were fighting with each other, even here in the neutral halls. Everyone brought weapons, bigger and more, dangerous ones each day. Then your people arrived. And they refused to follow our weapons rules. They said humans did not need weapons to defend themselves. We thought they were joking or trying to show off." Velteran's multiple eyes blinked slowly. "We were wrong." Jake leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "I cannot tell you everything. The guild made us promise never to speak of the details. But I will say this much. After that day, we understood that your species is different from all others. Very different." Before Jake could ask more questions, Velteran stood up quickly and left the cafeteria. That night, Jake sat in his quarters thinking about everything he had learned. Humans had some kind of special status that was based on fear and respect from other species. Something had happened 50 years ago that changed how aliens viewed humanity forever. Jake made a decision. He was going to find out the truth about why humans could walk unarmed in the guild halls when every other species had to surrender their weapons. Tomorrow, he would start looking for someone who had been part of that original human delegation. He had no idea that his investigation would reveal secrets that the guild had spent 50 years trying to keep buried. Jake spent the next few days talking to as many old guild members as he could find. Most of them gave him the same response. They claimed they did not know anything about what happened 50 years ago. But Jake was good at reading people, and these aliens were clearly lying. Some of the creatures became visibly nervous when he asked about humans. A large alien with scales and sharp teeth actually started sweating when Jake mentioned the human precedent. Another alien, one that looked like a walking tree, suddenly remembered an urgent appointment and left in the middle of their conversation. Lisa helped him search through more records. They found shipping manifests from 50 years ago that showed a human trade delegation had arrived during a period the records called the Faction Wars. Apparently, different alien species had been using the neutral ground of the guild as a place to settle their disputes. "Look at this," Lisa said, pointing to her data screen. "The security reports from that time period show weapons violations almost every day. Some of these alien groups were bringing military-grade equipment into the guild halls." Jake read over her shoulder. The reports mentioned plasma cannons, acid sprayers, and something called neural disruptors. Each day seemed to bring more dangerous weapons as different species tried to intimidate each other. The humans arrived right in the middle of this mess, Jake said. No wonder there was trouble. After another day of getting nowhere with current guild members, Jake decided to try a different approach. He went to the personnel office and asked to see the employment records of anyone who had been working at the guild for more than 40 years. The alien clerk, a small creature with fur and large ears, seemed reluctant to help. "Those records are very old. Most of the beings on that list are retired or no longer with us." "Just give me the list," Jake said firmly. "Please." The clerk's ears drooped, but it provided the information. Jake scanned through dozens of names until he found what he was looking for. Velteran, the alien who had spoken to him briefly in the cafeteria. According to the records, Veltaran had worked as a junior clerk in the security department 50 years ago. He had been promoted several times over the years before retiring 5 years ago. The records also showed that he'd been present during the human incident and had filed a witness report that was immediately classified. Jake found Veltaran's retirement address and sent him a message asking for a private meeting. To his surprise, the old alien agreed to meet him that evening in a quiet section of the station's garden area. The gardens were one of the few peaceful places on Nexus Prime. Plants from dozens of different worlds grew together under artificial sunlight. Jake found Veltaran sitting on a bench next to a small pond filled with fish-like creatures that glowed in the dark. "I knew you would find me eventually," Veltaran said without looking up. "You humans are very persistent." "I just want to understand," Jake said, sitting down beside the alien. "Everyone here treats humans differently, but no one will explain why." Veltaran was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft and distant. "I was 23 years old when your delegation arrived. I had been working in security for only 6 months. I thought I understood how dangerous different species could be. What changed your mind?" "Your captain Bill Harper and your negotiator Amy Foster." Veltaran finally looked at Jake. "They walked into the guild halls during the worst fighting we had ever seen. The Carathians were at war with the Vask Syndicate. The Silhari were trying to keep peace with their advanced technology. Weapons were being drawn every few hours." Jake waited patiently for the alien to continue. "When Captain Harper's group reached security, we told them they had to surrender any weapons like everyone else. Harper looked at our scanner machines and laughed. Not in a mean way, but like he found something funny that we did not understand." "What did he say?" "He said that humans did not carry weapons because they did not need them. He said their bodies were weapons enough." Veltaran shuddered slightly. "We thought he was making a joke or trying to act tough. We had seen dozens of species make similar claims. But he was serious? We insisted on following protocol. Harper agreed to be scanned, but he warned us that the machines might not understand what they found." Veltaran pointed to one of the glowing fish. "Do you see how that fish lights up when it feels threatened? We thought human biology was simple like most species we knew. We were very wrong." Jake leaned forward. "What did the scanners find?" "Everything," Veltaran whispered. "The machines detected toxins in human saliva that could paralyze most known species. Your sweat contains chemicals that could blind or disorient aliens with sensitive nervous systems. Your breath has compounds that affect the brain chemistry of dozens of different races." Jake stared at the alien in shock. "That can't be right. Humans aren't poisonous." "Not to other humans," Veltaran said. "But to us, your species is a walking chemical weapons factory. And that was just what the scanners could detect from outside your body." "There's more?" "The medical analysis was classified immediately, but rumors spread among the security staff. They said human bones were dense enough to break through most alien armor. Your muscles could generate force levels that matched mechanical enhancement systems. Your reaction speeds were faster than our computer targeting systems." Jake felt dizzy. This did not match anything he knew about human biology. "That seems impossible." "We thought so too. Until the demonstration." "What demonstration?" Veltaran stood up from the bench and began walking slowly around the pond. "The Carathians were getting frustrated with the negotiations. They decided to settle things the old way, through combat challenges. They thought humans looked weak and small. They believed defeating your delegation would give them dominance in all future trade deals. They challenged humans to a fight?" "Captain, Harper accepted the challenge, but he changed the rules. Instead of weapons combat, he suggested a demonstration of natural abilities. The Carathians agreed because they were confident in their physical strength." Jake followed Veltaran around the pond. "What happened?" "I was assigned to monitor the demonstration for security purposes, what I saw that day." Veltaran stopped walking and looked directly at Jake. "It changed everything we thought we knew about your species. Tell me." Captain Harper faced 3 Carathian warriors at once. These were not ordinary aliens. Carathians are apex predators from a heavy gravity world. They have claws that can cut through steel and strength that can crush stone. Harper defeated all 3 without throwing a single punch. How? He moved like liquid, flowing around their attacks. When they tried to grab him, he touched specific points on their bodies, and they collapsed. Not injured, but completely paralyzed. He explained calmly to the watching crowd exactly which pressure points he had used and why they worked on Carathian anatomy. Jake sat down heavily on another bench. Pressure points? That was just the beginning. Amy Foster stepped forward and offered to demonstrate human biochemical defenses. She explained in detail how human skin could secrete various compounds when threatened. She described how human saliva could be modified to produce different toxins depending on what type of attacker they faced. She was bluffing, right? Veltarin's expression became very serious. She asked for a volunteer from the audience to test her claims. A Silhari scientist offered himself, confident that his species' advanced medical knowledge would protect him. Foster simply breathed on the volunteer's exposed skin. And the Silhari collapsed within seconds. Foster had somehow modified her breath chemistry to produce a compound that specifically affected Silhari nervous systems. She had done this consciously, in real time, just by thinking about it. Jake felt cold despite the warm, artificial sunlight. How is that possible? We asked your delegation the same question. Captain Harper said that humans came from what he called a deathworld, a planet so dangerous that your species had evolved dozens of backup survival systems. He said most humans were not even aware of their full capabilities because they never needed to use them. But if humans are so dangerous, why aren't other species afraid of us? Veltarin looked at Jake with something that might have been pity. Who says we are not afraid? That night, Jake could not sleep. Everything Veltarin had told him seemed impossible, but it explained so much about how aliens treated humans. If even half of what the old alien said was true, then humans were not just another species in the galactic community. They were something entirely different. Jake made another decision. He needed to find someone from that original human delegation. He needed to hear this story from a human perspective. Tomorrow, he would start searching for Captain Bill Harper, Amy Foster, or anyone else who had been there 50 years ago. He had to know if his own species was really as dangerous as the aliens believed. Jake spent 2 days searching through Earth's diplomatic records to find information about the original trade delegation. Most of the files were archived in old databases that took time to access. Finally, he found what he was looking for. Captain Bill Harper had died 20 years ago. Amy Foster had passed away just 5 years earlier. But there was one more name on the delegation list, Dr. Dorothy Gray, who had been the mission's biochemist. According to the records, she was still alive and living on Haven's Rest, an agricultural world about 2 days' travel from Nexus Prime. I'm going with you, Lisa said when Jake told her about his plan. You don't have to do that. This might be a waste of time. Jake, after what we've learned, I need to hear this too. If humans really are what these aliens think we are, I want to understand it. They took a commercial transport to Haven's Rest. The planet was beautiful. Rolling green hills covered with farms and small towns. It was one of the newer human colonies, settled by people who wanted a quiet life away from the busy core worlds. Dorothy Gray lived in a small house at the edge of a farming community called Peaceful Valley. Jake and Lisa found her working in a large garden behind her house. She was in her 70s but moved with the energy of someone much younger. Dr. Gray? Jake called out as they approached. The elderly woman looked up from the alien plants she was tending. She had gray hair and kind eyes, but Jake noticed something else. She moved with a confidence and awareness that reminded him of trained soldiers he had known. I'm Jake Collins, Earth's ambassador to the Merchant Guild. This is my aide, Lisa Martinez. We'd like to talk to you about your time with the Guild 50 years ago. Dorothy's expression became guarded. That was a long time ago. Why are you interested in ancient history? Because that history is still affecting human relations with alien species today. We need to understand what really happened. Dorothy was quiet for a moment, studying both of them carefully. Finally, she nodded. Come inside. This is not a conversation. For the garden. Her house was simple but comfortable. The walls were decorated with pictures of various alien worlds and certificates from her career as a biochemist. She served them tea and sat down across from them in her living room. What exactly do you want to know? Dorothy asked. Everything, Jake said. The aliens act like humans are some kind of super predators, but no one will tell us why. Dorothy laughed, but there was no humor in it. Super predators. Is that what they call us now? She sipped her tea thoughtfully. I suppose that's better than some of the names they used back then. What happened during that first delegation? We walked into a war zone, Dorothy said simply. The guild halls were chaos. Different alien species were fighting for dominance, and they were using increasingly dangerous weapons to intimidate each other. We were just there to establish trade relationships. But something went wrong. Wrong isn't the right word. Something went unexpected. Dorothy set down her teacup. The aliens had never encountered humans before. They made assumptions about us based on our appearance and our technology level. What kind of assumptions? They thought we were weak, small, harmless. Dorothy smiled grimly. They thought wrong. Lisa leaned forward. We heard about a demonstration, some kind of combat challenge. The Carathians started it. They were frustrated because the negotiations weren't going their way. In their culture, when talking fails, you settle things through fighting. They challenged our delegation to prove human worthiness, and Captain Harper accepted. Bill was a good man, but he had a temper. When those Carathians implied that humans were cowards, he saw red, but he was also smart enough to change the rules of their challenge. How? Dorothy stood up and walked to the window that looked out over her garden. Bill proposed an unarmed demonstration instead of weapons combat. He said humans would show their natural capabilities without hurting anyone. Were you worried? Jake asked. Terrified, Dorothy admitted. Not because I thought Bill would lose, but because I was afraid of what would happen when he won. You knew he would win? Dorothy turned back to face them. Jake, do you know anything about human evolution? The basics, I guess. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world that was actively trying to kill them. We developed not just physical abilities, but mental ones. We learned to read other species, to understand their weaknesses, to adapt our tactics in real time. But the aliens are stronger than us, aren't they? Strength isn't everything. The Carathians were stronger, yes. They were also predictable. Their attack patterns followed their instincts. Bill had been studying alien anatomy since we arrived at the guild. He knew exactly where to hit them to disable them without causing permanent harm. Lisa asked, What did you do during the demonstration? I provided commentary, Dorothy said with a slight smile. While Bill was demonstrating human combat abilities, I was explaining human biochemistry to the audience. What kind of explanation? Dorothy returned to her chair and looked directly at Jake. I told them about human adaptability, how our bodies can modify their chemistry in response to threats, how we can consciously control processes that other species handle automatically. Like what? Adrenaline production, toxin secretion, pain response, temperature regulation. Dorothy counted off on her fingers. I explained how human skin can produce different compounds depending on what kind of attacker we're facing. Jake felt the same cold feeling he had experienced when talking to Velteran. You were bluffing, right? Was I? Dorothy asked quietly. The room became very silent. Jake stared at the elderly woman, trying to understand what she was implying. Dr. Gray, Lisa said carefully, are you saying humans really can do those things? I'm saying that humans are far more adaptable than most species realize. When your life depends on it, you discover capabilities you never knew you had. But you didn't actually poison anyone, did you? Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. There was a Siluri scientist who volunteered to test my claims. He was convinced that his species' advanced medicine would protect him from anything a primitive human could produce. What happened to him? He fainted, completely unconscious for about 10 minutes. When he woke up, he couldn't stop shaking. How? I breathed on him. Human breath contains dozens of different compounds. When you know what you're doing, you can emphasize certain ones and suppress others. The Silhari have very sensitive nervous systems. It wasn't hard to find a combination that would overload his senses. Jake stood up abruptly. That's impossible. Humans can't consciously control their biochemistry like that. Dorothy looked at him with something that might have been pity. Jake, have you ever heard of people lifting cars to save someone trapped underneath? That's just adrenaline. Adrenaline that they produced consciously in response to a crisis. Have you heard of people surviving an extreme cold by raising their body temperature through meditation? That's different, is it? Have you heard of people who can slow their heart rate, control their blood pressure, or modify their brain chemistry through concentration? Lisa was staring at Dorothy with wide eyes. You're saying all humans can do this? I'm saying all humans have the potential. Most never need to develop it. But when you're representing your entire species in front of aliens who think you're weak prey animals, Dorothy shrugged. You find motivation you didn't know existed. What happened after the demonstration? Everything changed. The aliens stopped seeing humans as another species to be cataloged and controlled. They started seeing us as something outside their understanding of biology. Were they afraid? Some were. Others were fascinated. All of them were much more respectful. Dorothy smiled. The Guild granted humans special status that day. We've had it ever since. Jake sat back down, his mind racing. But if humans are so dangerous, why hasn't this knowledge spread? Why don't more people know about this? Because the Guild doesn't want it to spread. They've spent 50 years carefully managing human contact with other species. They make sure that our full capabilities remain mostly theoretical to most aliens. Why? Because they're smart enough to realize that a frightened galaxy is a dangerous galaxy. It's better for everyone if most aliens think of humans as friendly, helpful partners rather than potential threats. Lisa asked, but what about humans? Shouldn't we know what we're capable of? Dorothy stood up again and walked back to the window. Jake, Lisa, what do you think would happen if every human knew they could consciously control their biochemistry? If they knew they could modify their physical capabilities through mental training? Jake thought about it. There would probably be a lot of accidents while people experimented, and a lot of people who would use those abilities for the wrong reasons, Dorothy added. The Guild's approach has kept the peace for 50 years. Maybe that's worth more than satisfying human curiosity. So we just pretend we don't know? You do what you think is best, Dorothy said. But remember, knowledge like this comes with responsibility. Once you understand what humans are truly capable of, you can never again pretend to be just another harmless species. That evening, as they prepared to return to Nexus Prime, Jake realized that his investigation had raised more questions than it answered. If Dorothy was telling the truth, then humans were indeed something unique. On the journey back to Nexus Prime, Jake could not stop thinking about everything Dorothy had told them. If humans really could consciously control their biochemistry and physical abilities, it would explain so much about alien behavior, but it also raised uncomfortable questions about human nature itself. Do you believe her? Lisa asked as they sat in the transport's observation lounge. I don't know, Jake admitted. Part of me thinks it's impossible, but another part of me remembers all those stories about humans doing incredible things in emergency situations. Like what? My grandmother used to tell me about my grandfather. In the war, he once carried 3 wounded soldiers to safety across 2 miles of desert. The doctor said it should have been physically impossible for someone his size. Lisa nodded thoughtfully. My cousin is a nurse. She told me about a mother who lifted a burning car off her child. The car weighed over 2 tons. When they arrived at Nexus Prime, Jake found a message waiting for him. Guildmaster Zethkri wanted to meet with him immediately. As Jake walked through the guild halls toward the meeting, he noticed that aliens were watching him more carefully than before. Ambassador Collins, Zethkri said when Jake entered his office. "I understand you have been conducting research into human history with the Guild." "Yes," Jake said simply. "I wanted to understand why humans receive special treatment here. And what have you discovered?" Jake studied the alien's compound eyes, trying to read his expression. "I've learned that 50 years ago, some humans demonstrated capabilities that surprised the Guild leadership." "Indeed." Zethkri's antennae twitched, nervously. "Perhaps it is time you learned the complete truth about that demonstration." "I'm listening." Zethkri activated a holographic display that showed the Guild halls as they had appeared 50 years ago. The faction wars were a dangerous time. Multiple species were attempting to use Guild facilities as neutral ground for their conflicts. Security was challenging. The hologram showed various alien groups moving through the halls, many of them carrying weapons despite Guild regulations. When the human delegation arrived, we treated them like any other new species. We assumed they would follow our security protocols without question. But they didn't. Captain Harper's refusal to surrender weapons seemed like simple stubbornness. At first, many species attempt to show dominance through displays of bravado. We expected humans to back down when pressed. The hologram changed to show a large gathering of aliens in what looked like an arena. The Carathians forced the issue by demanding a trial by combat. In their culture, this is a respected way to settle disputes. Dorothy told me about the demonstration. Dr. Gray provided an incomplete account, Zethkri said carefully. The demonstration revealed far more about human capabilities than she described. Jake leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "The combat demonstration was only the beginning. After Captain Harper defeated 3 Carathian warriors, other species decided to test human abilities in different ways. The hologram showed new scenes, different alien groups interacting with the human delegation. The Silhari Collective attempted to use their mental abilities on your negotiator, Amy Foster. The Silhari are among the most advanced psychic species in the galaxy. Their mental influence techniques can control the thoughts and emotions of most known races." "What happened?" "Not only did Foster resist their influence, she somehow reflected their mental probes back at them. 3 Silhari specialists were left, unconscious from feedback. Our medical team discovered that human neural patterns are so chaotic and unpredictable that they act as natural psychic static." Jake stared at the images. "That seems impossible." "So we thought." But the tests continued. The aquatic Merdahi decided to flood a section of the Guild halls to create an environment where they would have advantage over other species. They flooded part of the station. A controlled flood. The Merdahi can breathe underwater and move much faster in aquatic environments. They believed this would demonstrate their superiority over air-breathing species. How did the humans react? Your delegation member, a man named Steve Collins, not only survived the artificial flood, but seemed to thrive in it. He moved through the water faster than the Merdahi themselves. When some of the Merdahi became trapped by their own environmental manipulation, Collins rescued them. Jake felt a chill. Steve Collins had been his grandfather, the same man his grandmother had told stories about. Later analysis revealed that humans have far more efficient oxygen usage than most species. Your bodies can function in low oxygen environments that would kill other races. Your swimming abilities evolved from a need to escape aquatic predators on your homeworld. What other tests were there? Zethkri's expression became even more nervous. The most disturbing incident involved the Zethkri Collective, my own species. We attempted to use pheromone manipulation to influence human behavior. Pheromones? Chemical signals that control emotion and decision-making in most species. We have used this technique successfully for thousands of years to calm aggressive beings and encourage cooperation. Did it work on humans? Not only did it fail, it created an unexpected reaction. The humans' biochemistry began producing counter-pheromones that sent our specialists into states of panic and submission. Dr. Gray later explained that human bodies had automatically analyzed our chemical signals and created defenses against them. Automatically? According to Dr. Gray, humans evolved on a world where chemical warfare between species was common. Your bodies learn to identify hostile chemicals and produce counters in real time. This happens without conscious thought. Jake sat back in his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. So humans really are as dangerous as you thought. More dangerous than we initially realized. But that was not the most concerning discovery. There's more. Zethkri changed the hologram to show a timeline of events. Over the following weeks, we observed your delegation carefully. We noticed that they were unconsciously adapting to station life in ways that should have been impossible. What kind of adaptations? The artificial gravity on Nexus Prime is different from Earth gravity. Most species require months to adjust, if they can adjust at all. Your delegation adapted within days. The atmospheric mixture here contains compounds that are toxic to most Earth life. Your people not only survived, but seemed healthier after prolonged exposure. How is that possible? Your species does not just adapt to new environments. You weaponize adaptation. You turn challenges into advantages. You make hostile environments work for you instead of against you. Jake thought about human history, how his species had spread across every continent on Earth, surviving in deserts, frozen wastelands, and steaming jungles. We are good at adapting. You do more than adapt. You improve. After 2 weeks on our station, Dr. Gray was producing beneficial chemicals that actually improved her health. Your captain was developing muscle mass that matched our heavy gravity better than his Earth-normal physiology. Amy Foster was unconsciously learning to read alien body language and pheromone signals. They were evolving. In real time, consciously or unconsciously, your species was becoming better suited for life among aliens. This terrified our xenobiologists. Why? Because they realized that if humans ever felt threatened or cornered, you would not just fight back. You would adapt to become better at fighting back. You would turn our own biology against us. You would make our environments hostile to us, while making yourselves more comfortable in them. Jake understood now why aliens treated humans with such careful respect. You're afraid of what we might become. We are cautious about what you already are, Zethkri corrected. Humans are not just another species to be managed. You are a force of nature that happens to be intelligent and social. But we've been peaceful neighbors for 50 years, because we have been very careful to ensure that humans feel welcome and safe. A threatened human is dangerous. A threatened human species would be. Zethkri's antennae drooped. We prefer not to find out. So the special privileges, the respectful treatment, it's all based on fear? It is based on understanding. We understand that humans are happiest when they feel free and valued. We understand that human creativity and adaptability benefit everyone when directed toward cooperation rather than conflict. Jake stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the guild halls. Below he could see aliens of dozens of species moving through the corridors, conducting business, living their lives in peace. You've been managing us, he said quietly. We have been coexisting with you. There is a difference. Is there? You've hidden the truth about human capabilities from most of the galaxy. You've kept humans ignorant of their own potential. You've controlled our expansion and contact with other species. We have maintained peace, Zethkri said firmly. For 50 years, humans and aliens have worked together successfully. Trade flourishes. Science advances. Wars have been prevented. Jake turned back to face the guildmaster. But at what cost? How many humans might have developed their full potential if they had known what was possible? How many problems could we have solved if we understood our own biology better? And how many conflicts might have started if every human knew they could consciously modify their biochemistry to produce toxins? How many accidents would... Jake spent the next 3 days thinking about his conversation with Guildmaster Zethkri. He walked through the guild halls with new eyes, watching how aliens interacted with humans. Every respectful nod, every careful step aside, every nervous glance took on new meaning. Lisa found him in the observation deck staring out at the stars. You've been quiet since your meeting with Zethkri, she said, sitting down beside him. I've been thinking about responsibility, Jake said. about what we owe to our own species versus what we owe to galactic peace. Have you made a decision? I think so. But first, I want to test something. Jake had been doing research on human biology since learning the truth about the original demonstration. He had found scientific papers that supported some of what Dorothy and Zethkri had told him. Studies on meditation and pain control, research on adrenaline and extraordinary strength, reports on people who had survived impossible situations through willpower alone. What kind of test? Lisa asked. I want to see if I can do what Dorothy described. Consciously control my biochemistry. Lisa looked worried. Jake, that sounds dangerous. Everything we've learned suggests that humans evolved these abilities as survival mechanisms. They should be safe if I'm careful. That evening, Jake went to his quarters and began experimenting. He started with simple things, trying to raise his body temperature through concentration, attempting to slow his heart rate through breathing. Exercises. To his surprise, both techniques worked better than he expected. Over the next few days, Jake found that he could indeed modify various biological processes through focused thought. He could increase his reaction speed, improve his night vision, and even change the chemical composition of his saliva. Nothing dramatic. He was not producing deadly toxins, but the changes were measurable and real. Lisa watched these experiments with growing amazement. How does it feel? She asked. Natural, Jake said, and that was what surprised him most. Like I'm just remembering how to do something I used to know. Are you going to tell Earth about this? I'm going to tell the Guild about my decision first. Jake requested another meeting with Zethkri. This time, he also asked for representatives from the major alien species to be present. The meeting was held in the Guild's main conference room, with delegates from the Carathians, Silhari, Merdahi, and several other species. I've learned a great deal about human capabilities over the past few weeks, Jake began. I've also learned about the arrangements that have kept peace between humans and other species for 50 years. Guildmaster Zethkri's antennae twitched nervously. And what is your assessment of these arrangements? They've been successful, Jake admitted. Trade has flourished. Wars have been prevented. Both humans and aliens have benefited from cooperation. Then, you agree that the current system should continue? Asked the Silari representative, a tall alien with large eyes and pale blue skin. I think the current system needs to evolve, Jake said carefully. The truth about human capabilities cannot remain hidden forever. Other humans will eventually discover what I've discovered. When that happens, it's better if the revelation comes through official channels rather than by accident. The Carathian delegate, a massive warrior with thick fur and sharp claws, growled low in his throat. Are you threatening us, human? I'm offering you a choice, Jake said calmly. We can continue the current arrangement of secrecy and careful management, or we can work together to gradually introduce the truth in a way that maintains stability. What do you propose? Zethkri asked. Jake had spent hours preparing for this moment. A controlled disclosure program. We tell humans about their capabilities gradually, starting with medical and scientific personnel. We provide training and oversight to prevent accidents. We make it clear that these abilities are tools for survival and cooperation, not weapons for conquest. And in exchange? Asked the Merdahi representative, whose aquatic suit bubbled as it spoke. Humans remain committed to peaceful coexistence. We continue to work within guild frameworks. We help other species understand that human capabilities are not a threat when properly channeled. The alien delegates looked at each other uncertainly. Finally, Zethkri spoke. This is a significant change to arrangements that have worked for 5 decades. Why should we risk stability for the sake of human curiosity? Jake stood up and walked to the center of the room. Because the current system is built on a lie, and lies eventually collapse. But more importantly, because keeping humans ignorant of their own potential is wasteful. How so? Think about what humans have accomplished in 50 years of galactic contact. Now imagine what we could accomplish if we understood our full capabilities: medical advances, environmental adaptation, crisis response, exploration of hostile worlds. Lisa, who had been quietly observing, added, humans could help other species develop similar abilities. If we understand how conscious biochemical control works, we might be able to teach it to aliens who currently don't have these capabilities. The Silhari representative leaned forward with interest. You would share these abilities? Knowledge should benefit everyone, Jake said. That's what cooperation means. The room fell silent as the alien delegates considered this proposal. Finally, the Karathian spoke. If humans begin developing these abilities openly, how do we know you will not use them against us? Jake had expected this question. For the same reason you haven't used your claws against us, or the Silhari haven't used their mental abilities against us, or the Mirdahi haven't flooded stations to gain advantage. Because we're all stronger when we work together than when we fight each other. Pretty words, the Karathian said. But humans are unpredictable. So are Karathians, Jake replied with a slight smile. So are all intelligent species. That's what makes the galaxy interesting. Zethkri's compound eyes focused on Jake. You realize that if we agree to this disclosure program, there will be no going back. Once humans understand their capabilities, the galaxy will never be the same. The galaxy is always changing, Jake said. The question is whether we guide that change wisely or let it happen randomly. After several hours of discussion, the alien delegates asked for time to consult with their governments. Jake and Lisa returned to their quarters to wait for an answer. Duo. You think they'll agree? Lisa asked. I think they're smart enough to realize that they don't really have a choice. The truth is already starting to come out. Better to manage it than to be surprised by it. 3 days later, Zethkri called Jake back to his office. The Guild Council has reached a decision. We will support a controlled disclosure program with several conditions. What conditions? First, the disclosure must be gradual and carefully monitored. No dramatic revelations that could cause panic. Second, humans who develop advanced capabilities must register with Guild authorities and undergo regular evaluation. Third, any human who uses these abilities to harm others will face severe consequences. Jake nodded. Those terms seem reasonable. What else? Fourth, humans must continue to work within existing trade and diplomatic frameworks. No sudden demands for special treatment or renegotiation of treaties. Fifth, the Guild reserves the right to adjust the program if it creates instability. Agreed. When do we start? Immediately. Dr. Gray has already agreed to serve as the first human instructor. She will train a small group of medical personnel and scientists who will then train others. Jake was surprised. You've already talked to Dorothy? We have been in contact with Dr. Gray for 50 years, Ambassador Collins. She has been our primary consultant on human biology and psychology. Who did you think helped us design the current management protocols? Jake realized he still had much to learn about the relationship between humans and aliens. She never mentioned that. Dr. Gray understands the importance of discretion. She also understands that knowledge must be shared responsibly. Over the following months, Jake watched as the disclosure program slowly began. Human medical personnel learned about conscious biochemical control and began teaching patients how to manage pain and heal faster. Human scientists discovered that they could enhance their mental abilities to process complex information more efficiently. There were accidents, as Jake had expected. Some humans tried to develop abilities too quickly and hurt themselves. Others became overconfident and used their enhanced capabilities inappropriately. But the training programs evolved to address these problems, and the overall results were positive. Jake also noticed changes in how aliens treated humans. The careful fear was gradually being replaced by respectful cooperation. Alien species began asking humans to help solve problems that required adaptability and creative thinking. 6 months after the disclosure program began, Jake stood once again on the observation deck looking out at the stars. Lisa joined him as she often did. Any regrets? She asked. None, Jake said. We're still learning what it means to be human, but at least now we're learning honestly. The aliens seem to be adjusting well. Better than I expected. I think they're relieved that the secret is finally out. Keeping lies takes a lot of energy. Lisa pointed to a ship docking at the station. New human delegation arriving. scientists from the Mars colonies. They're here to learn about enhanced environmental adaptation. Jake watched as the human scientists disembarked,